Jane Fulmer in 1963 in Ibadan. Today, what are we talking about? If we can organize it then, remember in 63 there wasn't as much oil money as there were. But if you had a modicum of planning, credibility, and you will account for what you're giving, people will come to the shores of Nigeria to do great things. So
maybe maybe he would have fought that fight in Nigeria.
Yes, why not? Because this is the power of television. That's why we keep saying that there are billions of dollars in sports. But why can't we simply plan, have a policy framework that everybody will follow? The elections that are on board now, what are the parameters of success? What are the benchmarks of success? You find hangers-on and people that are underemployed populating the boards of federations. Why don't you give them benchmarks of success so that in 4 years you get nothing? You're not going to be there.
I thought the guidelines, the adjustment in the guidelines for the elections.
No, guidelines, every sports minister that come on board creates his own guidelines. That's a recipe for confusion. Each cycle, each Olympic cycle, each minister creates his own election guidelines. In this particular one, the man said, or the ministry said, there were some people weren't going to run because if you run 2 times or 3 times, within a week, the same policy changes. And if you find a situation where you've had one minister practically every year since the democratic dispensation, it's a recipe for confusion again, because you don't know what you're doing. And then again, the ministers we have are stopgap measures. Just look at the historical antecedents. They are on their way to senatorial elections or their way to gubernatorial elections. So you find people who stay practically about 1 year and then they move on. And then there's no policy framework to follow. So we're just a country that votes billions every 4 years. Spend it within 2 weeks of the competition. Come home. Nobody is thinking about the athletes. Right now, go to a place like Unilag, Yaba. At least living like refugees, training on their own. So if in 1963, remember, I think it was the Great Awo that was managing about 8 states with meager resources. And they can stage a world championship, Dick Tiger versus Jim Fulmer, an American. By the way, in association with Kid Hogg and Bassey. That's what the promoter said. And we could beam that to the world. Now imagine the oil money we have. Imagine the resources we have. And we cannot even have a modicum of a sports policy framework. So it's sad and disheartening.
Mr. Dudu, he's talked about the fact that every year we seem to have a new minister of sports. But there are ministry staff that have been, some of them are in there, have been there for over 25 years. And if you ask them, they tell you...
The civil servants.
Civil servants.
Yes.
Don't you think that that could have been like a platform for sustainability? With all the documents that have come from all the committees that have been and all of that?
Well, it looks like you're giving too much credit to those people in the ministry, because we're talking about people who are there, who think through their pockets. They're not interested in taking sports forward. So many propositions, so many ideas have been crippled by these same people. That's why, we're asking for the Sports Commission, National Sports Commission, to be returned.
With a board.
With a board. Not just one minister, telling us about guidelines. These associations have their own constitutions. You leave them to run. But when you come with your own whims and create measures to eliminate. Yes, I do agree that some of these personnel, they need to go.
Yeah.
But again, there must be a standard framework.
Must balance the equities.
There has to be some, a semblance of reasoning. Now, these people, the people in the ministries, excuse my choice of words, are still. Sports is a very dynamic activity. There are new things. Dan and I didn't go to school to study sports. We go to seminars, we go to conferences where we exchange ideas, and there are global trends.
Yeah.
Today, Australia holds about 23 world titles in different sports because the National Institute of Sports is functional. If you go to this one now, it's worse than the refugee camp. And it's all been run by people in the ministry
Okay.
who have cobwebs.
Okay.
In fact,
Nido,
this is a very...
let's leave government out of
This is
it
a
now.
very key point. Just please, if you can give me just a minute. In fact, a couple of years ago, the then MTN chief executive, Adrian Wood, is from Australia. So we voted, the MTN voted money for an interface between Australia Institute of Sport and Nigerian Institute of Sports. And I happened to have traveled to the Institute of Sports with the President Obasanjo at the time, and MTN voted money to lift our Nigerian Institute of Sports. What happened? Ministry officials started using the funds as a STAR code and going to Australia. Nobody again utilized that program, and the money simply dissipated. The second point that is critical at this juncture is that some of us conceptualize the concept of Team Nigeria. Team Nigeria is to be headed by a private sector practitioner. So what that means in essence is that any money voted into the Team Nigeria vehicle would of necessity be accounted for. Don't forget, in the last 15, 20 years, government money, nobody talks about, nobody accounts for it. So where is Team Nigeria today? Some of us are asking that question. The reason is simple. Money given into that Team Nigeria concept must of necessity be accounted for. So they've killed it. And go check the records. I challenge them to publish their accounts. MTN put money, at the time they were putting money for the interface between Australian Institute of Sports and Nigerian Institute of Sports, that they wanted to put more money, but the first one they put in was not accounted for. So the challenge is, where is the vehicle for private sector and public sector partnership? And then high net worth individuals also want to put money. Where is the Team Nigeria vehicle that will spend nights conceptualizing?
All right, Dan, we'll just take a short break and we'll come back and continue this conversation.
Welcome back, Mr. Rume and Mr. Angera. Should we now say, because things have gone south, we all sit back and allow them to continue to decay? What's the way forward?
Well, let me start
And that's in closing.
Yeah. Let me start by saying that, we've postponed the National Sports Festival for so many years. It has to happen to recreate awareness. Each state government should do its best to have the state sports festival and let the people relate. Let's have community synergy, and let's look at school sports all over again. And government needs to create an enabling environment for private sector to have the comfort and impetus to put money into it.
Confidence.
The confidence.
Yes.
The government has to challenge the private sector, and the private sector will respond when they know that something is being done to keep their interest, because nobody wants his brand. Brand custodians are very sensitive about the wrong things about sports, hogging the headlines all of the time. And we have a framework that will, a 10-year plan, for instance. We know that the next Olympics, what we're expecting is medals from boxing, so we task the people in the area in Edo Delta State. Medals from boxing will come from the east as well. Weightlifting will come from Cross River and all of that. A plan, that, and a roadmap with deliverables, timelines.
Simple.
Okay.
The matter is really simple. It's like what we're doing now is like a general going to war without any plan. Just have a policy framework that everybody would understand, and the private sector would then key in. The Team Nigeria concept is there. And by the way, money spent on sports is tax deductible. I think it was during Obasanjo's administration again that some of us worked so hard on that platform. And just like Dudu said, the private sector people would key in only when they see openness, credibility, and accountability. Don't think you're going to mess up with Pepsi and then Coke will talk to you, because those brand managers at the end of the day are friends and they talk to each other. So it is absolutely important that we have a policy framework called sports policy Anybody can run sports. Any minister can come in. Any politician can come in. But please follow this roadmap. Don't wake up today and say, this is the guidelines for election. Within a week, you change it and all that. It just creates a crisis of confidence and credibility. And no private sector person would like to associate his brand equity to such a vortex of confusion. So please, and by the way, there are high net worth individuals that want to put money as well.
Thank you very much.
If there's no credibility, they will sit home and don't want to be rubbished.
Thank you very much. Bleak picture, but once again, the conclusion is we have to plan. We have to plan. We have to have a policy which we will follow. Thanks to Mr. Dan Ngerem, former President, Athletics Federation of Nigeria, and Godwin Dudu-Orume, CEO, Multisports and Entertainment Limited. Thank you very much for coming to talk sports with us this morning.
Thank you.
Sunrise will return in just a moment. Please join us.